Look at us. We're back. We're back. Hey, everybody, we're back. I have directly in the center the man, the myth, Robin Black. And of course, along to my, which would be left, is Richard Chow, which of course is with Legends Warrior, has done a lot of good work and Bellator for matchmaking. Gentlemen, how are you all doing?
I'm good. How about you, Rich?
Oh man, it's good to be back together again. I actually missed you guys last week, believe it or not.
I did too. It's a weird one. We talk about fighting, training, life, learning things. Habits are big. If we missed 2 weeks in a row, suddenly we wouldn't be doing this. You almost have to start again. Like it's okay to miss a workout. It's okay to miss a meeting. It's okay to miss a whatever, but you've got to get right back at it. Missing a workout doesn't mean I stopped working out. Like, you got to get in there. And so we're in here.
Yeah, no, you're right. It feels on that note, it's like training, right? You get this rhythm, you get your rhythm, you get your timing down, and that all gets thrown off when you don't get those reps in, which is, what we're doing here again today. So what's up, Sensei?
Yep. Yeah, lots of people have been watching and commenting, and it's been super cool. Lots of topics, things we can talk about, but we just meander all over the place. I'm traveling tomorrow for a fight show called Levels Fight League in Amsterdam, and I was at Jorge Masvidal's show last weekend. But you guys, what do you want? Actually, let's start with you, Rich. Did anybody watch this awesome fight? If you didn't, I don't know what you're doing, because these are the fights we got to watch. We'll talk about the fight for sure, Rich, but you were kind of alluding to something with the two of us before.
Yeah, I texted you guys Friday, or I think it was Saturday afternoon, actually. And actually, let me start by saying, hey, we said we weren't going to be the guys that do the breakdowns and whatnot, right? We're going to be doing it different. And we still are. We're still committed to that. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up was it really highlighted a take, Robin, that you had, something we discussed previously on the first and second episodes, where we were talking about the effectiveness of karate. And how MVP, who didn't change his style at all for that fight, he was still coming out in that point fighting. You know what I'm talking about, Mallory?
Yes, sir.
That's in your roots. That point fighting style that at one point was disregarded. Right? It was, you're going to get taken down and choked out. What are you doing there? That has no place in this type of combat in mixed martial arts. Well, guess what? 2021. That's not the case. And I spoke to MVP's one of his trainers, Alexis, on Saturday. He hit me up and asked me what I thought of the fight, and I ended the conversation with that. Was who would have thought in 2021 karate would be more of a threat and more challenging to prepare for? Obviously, when done at this level, than let's say Jiu-Jitsu and some of the other arts that we thought were far superior for this type of combat.
It was Dan Lambert, when we were discussing this, I said I was commentating. It was actually Jorge's show the first time, and something was happening, and Lambert was like, man, I'm in the gym every day, I'm watching the ATT guys training. It's like, who would have thought that? Like, who would have thought that karate was the big challenge today? But it is. If we think about it, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when it was first the biggest challenge, the issue was we didn't understand it. So UFC 1, if we were fighting Royce, something's happening and we don't know what it is, and neither do the commentators. And the unknown, if you don't know what it is, you don't know how to deal with it, your reactions are improper and are going to be harvested, and you're going to be in trouble. And we talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. That same relationship between Royce and the rest of us, however you want to do it, that distance between he was aware and we were unaware. The average MMA fighter, and I'm going to just throw out like a prototype with no disrespect because I love him, Uriah Faber. Mm-hmm. The average great MMA fighter, say Uriah Faber, WEC days, what he didn't know how to do was karate the way Michael Venom Page does it or Stephen Wonderboy Thompson does it. If somebody fought that way then, they would have beat all those guys.
To jump in here, someone chimed in and said the point fighting is super deceptive. Is if you've really never seen it before, it is. Oh, and that is a question. That is not a Raisha. That is what's the name from Bloodsport. There you go.
It's Bolo.
Yeah.
Bolo.
But
the quick closing of distance and everything, and it's something you learn from a point perspective, and we've talked about this before, but you're closing the distance, what karate is typically known for, a blitz and an attack. And one of the things that we preach every time we're getting together, and people that learn this, distance. Know how far, know how long your opponent's leg is, know what their longest attack is. And as you can see with MVP, he exploits that so well. He's right there. He's so long, he's so lanky, and you think he's this far away, and really with that blitz, he's that far away, and you're hit, and he'll sting you with a punch or kick really quick, which sets up a bunch of other things. And I think you see a lot of people that are really kind of a little bit confused when they're in there. They're not sure what to do. If you look at his other past fights, where there's just really like confusion, like, what do I do now? I got 3 minutes left on the clock. What do I do?
Right. Guys in the gym, just for all these years, and we've touched on this again. I love how these topics and these takes keep coming back up. Guys in the gym and training and preparation, for the most part, got used to a certain rhythm and a way of fighting. Double jab, overhand right, put you against the fence, try and take you down.
Yeah.
Right? Like that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And old became new, something we've talked about before. And we saw it on full display at the highest levels. And, there are a couple other guys that, although they may not have adopted, it just got me thinking, although they may not have adopted that the full, point fighting stance and do it like RD or MVP or Wonder Boy, but they've changed their stance. Patricio Pitbull, Conor McGregor, they didn't come out in a traditional boxing stance, right? They came out in more of a traditional martial arts striking stance. I've even seen AJ McKee do it, right?
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, fellas, but we're seeing guys coming out not just in this boxing stance. It's not just boxing and wrestling anymore for MMA. Old is new again.
So, and the root of it is that we keep, no matter how long we will progress down this road, or a road of technology, or a road of politics, or belief systems, or whatever, we'll make the mistake over and over again. We see something, let's say it was karate, kung fu, whatever it was, and we say, we know what's better. What's better is boxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, Jiu-Jitsu. We then believe that's the best, and we live in a world where we believe this is best. People will still say strongest base for MMA is wrestling, because they've heard that said, and that has felt true during certain eras. Wrestling's always good, by the way. But we believe something is then the best, but the best is always the thing that is the way to beat that thing. Yeah. So, and if everybody now uses a ton of tight body, low to the ground, particular strategies, it will be beaten by the thing it beat, just done a different way, right? The boxing Muay Thai combination existed to defeat karate and taekwondo. Yeah. Karate and taekwondo mutated will now be the way to defeat this. And when you're stuck in only one period of the flow chart, you think that is final. So I don't know if I told you guys this one. I think I did actually, but I'll tell it again quick. My wife and I were watching like old videos of like birthing videos, and they're like from the 1980s. They're so old and they're so shitty. We're like, look how stupid that is. That's how this will all look in 20 years too. Yeah. Like we're not anywhere. We're not at a destination. We're just a point on the flow. We can look back and see it all. You just can't look forward, but forward is all different too. Nobody arrived, because these guys who boxed this way, they were sure they had figured it all out. That was boxing forever too. Just the way that people now think whatever it is this minute is the thing forever too. And it never is. It never will be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally agree. And it's, and just you're further mixing of the martial arts. You know, people when they saw Hoist, they like we need to understand this. We need to understand why we're getting tapped out and choked out and everything else. So you start to understand jiu-jitsu, you start to understand ground fighting, you start to understand position more and everything else. So it's just like baking this cake, and you add a little bit more into it. And I know, Robin, we both are friends with Raymond, and obviously people bring him in to consult and to say, hey, we need your help with this. And I actually asked him, I said, so what do you do the first day you actually come there? And, you know, I know you're being brought in specifically for this. And he says, I kind of take an assessment of things because I'm here to help teach. And for the first couple times, it's going to be difficult for someone that has never been exposed to it. But it's his job to expose them to it so that it's not a surprise come fight.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but there's still only so much. So you can become a
so
blue
much,
belt in
exactly.
this type of sensitivity, but that's still not going to let you beat Mike. The gentleman who was number 7 in the world who kicked and broke his nose the second last fight. Who was it again? Anderson. Yeah, Derek. Derek's a great fighter. These are people. What people don't understand is when they see these particular fights, they watch the result and judge it as if it has something to do with the other guy. But he prepared. You always prepare, but 6 weeks of preparing to defend Ronda's armbar was never going to be as much as the 20 years she had spent to find all the little answers to the problem and armbar you. This is one taker here, or Torker. There's one thought I have here, and this is always, I think this is going to be an important theme. Maybe we'll all that will progress on. Maybe it won't. But how martial arts travel and permeates evolve because of MMA. MMA is nothing special. MMA is just a part of martial arts. It's not some new thing. It's a position. It's a type of fighting. Where we create boundaries, environments, a shape that we fight in, time, rules. It is a set of rules. It is a sporting environment, but it really has no special place in the evolution of MMA other than it allowed us to test martial arts. MMA doesn't have any special place on the flowchart of fighting whatsoever, except for the moment in time it was a popular sport and it allowed us to test martial arts. Do you guys agree?
I agree. I definitely agree.
Rich, what do you think?
Yeah, it is the platform to, like you said, test things out, because you always wondered, oh, in a real fight, that shit wouldn't work. Right? Oh, yeah. You know, that's not working in a real combat situation. And this is where we got to test it all out. And it's fascinating, you know, to see, going back to the fight we were just talking about, MVP and Lima. Lima wins the first one. Muay Thai beat karate, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And karate got the next one.
Yeah.
You know, perhaps we'll see a rubber match, and we'll see. But yeah, we got to see styles versus styles and the effectiveness of certain techniques and disciplines. And yeah, that's, as you said, that's what MMA, I think, for us martial arts geeks, that's what we're getting to see. That's what that's where our fascination lies in, is, you know, this platform lets us get some answers. You know,
that's right.
You know, that we're training, that we're thinking about training, that we thought wasn't effective. You know, we finally get a chance to see it all play out.
I have a quick question on that. We all of us remember Anthony Bourdain, who was unfortunately has passed from us, and I used to enjoy watching his shows, because his story and his show was about going places and eating different exotic foods and traveling. And he was in, if I remember right, he was in Okinawa, and he had a chance to go to one of these, you know, original dojos to go and train. And they knew that he was a jiu-jitsu stylist, and they called him out and asked him, you know, please come out to the floor. And they did some sparring. And he says, I feel completely out of my element here. I need something to grab on, a neck to choke, an arm to isolate. This is completely foreign to me. But within a few minutes of the class, 20 minutes, you know, however long they train, he began to see and to understand. But I mean, you think of how brave that is. Your style is specific to this, and you go somewhere else where they do something completely different, and you feel like literally like a fish out of water.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, you're not a fish out of water. You're just a fish in very different water, thicker water or darker water. You're still a fish, right?
Mhm.
So MMA above other martial arts due to the fact that it's open blatantly and openly. And then he corrected himself. Thank you, sir. And we appreciate you, man. Blending was done before, but it's a cultural norm. True. So the first Olympiad, there was pancrase,
Mhm.
right? Wrestling and boxing, hitting and grappling. The very first Olympiad. It's all one thing. So I like to think of it like this, and this is maybe a thought experiment that helps explore it in different ways for pleasure and for art and for work. But I think of it as martial arts is all things, anything that we are capable of doing. Anything that we could physically do with our bodies and our minds, nonverbal, anything I could do to you or with myself is martial arts. We start removing things when we want to structure boxing or Muay Thai or MMA or anything. But boxing wrestles. Boxers learn to wrestle and grapple and underhooks and stuff in the 50s, and I'm sure in the 20s and many other times. Actually, and this is great. This is right up our alley. But actually, Mallory, maybe this brings you to this, right? Because there was many reasons that we started this podcast. The three of us wanted to hang out. It's actually super therapeutic and pleasant. I was at my doctor today, and I was talking about stress. And I am stressed from travel and work, and I hate saying that because it's all good. My work is successful. I'm traveling to do things I love. I'm having a baby. These are all great things. But I was telling my doctor, I said, yeah, I'm feeling anxious and stressed. And he said, well, you need to find some things outside of your work. What do you like to do for your hobbies and for fun? I said, well, I like to do martial arts. I like to talk with my friends about martial arts. And he said, when you do that, don't think of it as work. Don't worry about like where it's going or how we're packaging it. When you're doing martial arts, try not to think of it that way. Try to do it all with the spirit of play. Anyway, so we started this for therapeutic reasons, but also because we're nerds and we love Black Belt magazine. And when they told Mallory they were interested in playing host to our podcast, we were interested. So we started digging through old classic Black Belt magazines. Mallory, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, so I will let you all choose. I went through randomly, and what I'll do is I'll put this in the chat. If you all didn't know, you can actually go and browse, I think, the complete Black Belt magazine archive on Google. I'll post that in the chat in a few minutes. But I've got a couple topics. You tell me what sounds good. So for Black Belt magazine, March of 1964, it talks about Capoeira, Brazilians karate. Okay, also have Black Belt magazine. Also in May 1964, Karateka versus wrestler, and also judo versus boxing. Again, the study of style versus styles. Old is new again, once again.
Yeah.
Black Belt magazine from March 1965. This was the first mention of something I thought that was very interesting. They called it floor judo. And this is jiu-jitsu because of what was described here and what actually happened.
Okay, I want to talk about all of it. I don't want to pick any of it. Okay, go back to the beginning. Let's say yeah or nay.
Let's go ahead and get let me pull that up over
floor judo. That's fucking cool.
Floor judo is, I saw that, so that speaks Robin 100%.
Well, I mean that spoke to the Gracies, right?
Exactly. Let me get that up real quick. Let me see.
I'm sure Haleo was studying floor judo.
Yeah.
Floor judo in the sense. Let's see here. Let's get this up real quick. I've shifted that 1 second. I have to get the share going. There we go. And
floor judo.
So this one, this is the first one I have right here. I got to get that floor judo one up.
Okay, this is so cool. So let's just chat about capoeira for a few minutes, and then we'll try to hit a bunch of these over the next half hour, 40 minutes that we have. This will be really fun. Capoeira, Brazilians karate. So read the headline if you can, Mal.
Sure thing. The players would jump, weave, gamble, trip, and kick their opponents, then avoid retaliation by slithering on the ground like serpents. That is your opening topic for cap. And you think about it, in 1964, how many people had actually heard of this art?
Yeah, it was done, apparently by like most martial arts, by prisoners or oppressed or somebody who was being, controlled by a stronger, greater force and had to study in secret. And capoeira, of course, you could do it and make it look like a game or a dance as a way to train martial arts. There are now sort of multiple branches of the capoeira tree, but two primary ones. One is much higher and flashier, and one is much lower. But I suspect at this point they were at the same root. Rich, there's been a few capoeira guys that you've promoted in your life or matched.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Every now and then, man, you'll see a technique, a capoeira kick, someone coming in with that stance.
Yeah.
Again, it's just one of those things where I think a modern MMA fighter would probably see that and say, that has no place here.
Yeah.
Right. Like we were just talking conversation about karate, but when done properly, and blended and implemented into a good martial artist's kind of arsenal or repertoire, I mean, it could be very, very effective. But a lot of guys from Brazil, will have a capoeira background and see it in certain techniques, especially with the
rhythms.
Kicks. Yeah.
Different rhythms. Yeah, so cool. Mal, any thoughts? Let's shotgun these.
So one of the things I had a chance to view a couple of years ago at there's a tournament in Florida called the U.S. Open. It's one of the biggest karate tournaments in the United States. Is I got a chance to saw capoeira, for the first time live, my own eyes, not watching it in a movie theater or this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And they came and they had the instruments, and these guys played while the guy did his kata. And the smoothness that this gentleman was performing with, I mean, of course, there's a lot of spinning techniques, there's a lot of twists and turns and things. I'm like, wait, what did he do? I'm trying to figure out which way your body is flowing, but it just looks so natural. When you look at a gymnast in slow motion, and you see the human body in motion, and you can see, that bit of motion fed the shoulders, which propelled the legs, which caused, the back whip and then the back tuck and so on and so forth. This is what he looked like watching him do his kata, and everyone was there playing the instruments. And please forgive my ignorance about not knowing the name of the instruments, but watching this, it was so artful and was so mesmerizing, and I could understand the attention. And you've done a great breakdown about a capoeira fighter. He did a two spin kicks, and then he kicked this taller guy. I'm just took him out. You can get mesmerized for that second, like, what is he doing? And then next thing you know, you're looking up at the lights.
It truthfully, and we're gonna see this with some practicer of wushu or kung fu somewhere in the next 4 years, and people will be like, kung fu's the best,
the new thing. Mm-hmm.
The new thing. There'll be somebody who does rooted aikido, which is, it's the way aikido evolved, is it became fairly nonsensical, and every martial art has that potential, even when they're rooted in strong fundamentals. One day there'll be a guy in 2025 who will have their aikido roots and will win fights. There'll be a wushu guy, and if there has been capoeira players and fighters, but it's the same thing we're talking about with Paige. If everybody's dealing with a particular rhythm, a particular cadence, a particular time signature, and somebody just isn't that, it'll be hard to deal with, particularly at first. Leona Machida will still beat, and we will get Machida soon, I promise. And we will all nerd out to Machida. Rich knows him much better than I do. But Machida will still beat a lot of guys. But at the beginning, it just didn't make any sense. It might as well have been jiu-jitsu standing up. Japanese, Brazilian interpretation jiu-jitsu, but standing up. It made no sense to other MMA fighters. Now it makes some sense, and he's still difficult to deal with.
If you go back and you look and you saw all the hip fakes and the hand fakes that he was doing, and people you're just guessing which way is he coming, what is he doing? I remember, I think it was Goldberg said the age of the dragon has arrived, and you're right. It was totally confusing, but like you said, people adapt, people study. They say, okay, let's look at this. I need to understand this. And pretty soon people have kind of caught up to this or whatever this is. The same thing people are talking about the calf kick. It's and like you said, it's been around for a long time, but now it's getting a little spotlight.
It's been around since somebody tried to hit somebody with their foot.
Right.
Toker comes through with your capoeira instruments there, Mal.
There you go. I did. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I have a question for you. Would you say that as I'm thinking of capoeira guys, but would you say that I know in the UFC there's a guy now, Pereira, and he's crazy exciting, man. He's jumping off the fence, he's doing backflips.
Yeah. Pereira,
right?
Yeah, 100%.
Would you say that, I guess this legend kind of blends a little bit everything, but like Anderson Silva, there's moments, some of his rhythm and movements are, they embody capoeira. Those are capoeira.
So I have a thought on it. I don't, and we talk about this. I do a lot forever. This is how I see it. I don't think there's such a thing as capoeira. Just like there's no such thing as boxing. Not really, right? Is this a capoeira kick or a taekwondo kick? Because a lot of the time it's the same kick. But what would the act of training capoeira do for the human? And one theory that I have is it allows you, teaches you, and facilitates your ability to express yourself in a state of experimental play. And I think that's what you're seeing in Anderson Silva. Whether he learned that through capoeira or learned that with taekwondo or learned that because he's a character or wherever, it's the playfulness. It's the irregularity of it. And irregularity is the goal, not capoeira or taekwondo. Capoeira and taekwondo are the tools to achieve experimental irregularity. I'm kind of blowing my own mind here. This sort of makes a lot of sense to me, but that happens a lot where it sounds like nonsense to other people. But to me, I'm suddenly going, wait a second, it isn't about any of these things. It's about your ability to act like a child and not edit yourself. And that's what you train.
Yeah, I think Anderson's a great example of that. We've obviously seen him find success in boxing lately. We know the guy can box. It's like boxing, Muay Thai, Taekwondo, Capoeira, karate. I think there's a great example of just somebody that has blended everything together and made his own style. Like you said, Robin, he's not doing any one of those things. He's doing his own thing, right? Is that kind of what you're alluding to, Robin?
Yeah. And then it's the sort of expressive behavior that he actually trained, the freedom to be Anderson Silva. And he achieved that through all of these different things. Yeah. Tokero man here, we called him Toker, but we'll remember which looked like. But Tokero man 91, that's his YouTube. So, and he's a big supporter of the show and of martial arts and anything we've done. When Mal and I were doing the Bellator streams, Tokero man 91.
So big shout out to him.
That's a great name.
Let me get another one up here. So here's your floor judo, Robin. So this comes to us from the let's see what it's okay. So this is Black Belt Magazine, March 1965, and the article is called "The School That Teaches Strangulation." So the basic gist of this article is you had a British judo club, and they went to France, and they spoke no French, and the French spoke no English, and they literally ran around in their gis, holding their black belts, saying judo, and they would say, "Oh, down the street, go down the street," and it took them about a half an hour to find the local judo club. And they kept saying judo, and trying to say it slowly. Imagine how hard it is to communicate with someone who has no idea what you're saying, and you're dressed around in white, and they finally got it. So they got to the right place. So they started sparring, and as he describes in this article, it was a balmy 98 degrees. They had this thing of water set aside. But one of the things I wanted to read was that, let's see here. They did some sparring, and he says our French hosts were very polite. They did not want to throw us that hard, and we began getting the sparring started getting more intense. And one kind of young upstart started doing a little thing, so the guy felt he should teach him a lesson. And I'll pick up the article from here. He says, then he stood up and he turned his back on me. Freeman shook his head. Turning your back on any opponent is a very bad habit in judo. And let me see, Bokuis at London and New Jersey have a quick remedy. I wrapped him up nice and tight in a choke and put him to sleep to teach him a lesson. But also, this is where he mentioned, he said, in the London Bukuai, where Ken Freeman was schooled, the fascination with judo as a standing technique extended to judo on the mat. It was not enough to snatch a man off his feet or throw him to the ground. One followed him down. One sought to limit his motion by shifting one's weight on top of him. One sought to surrender through pain, tap out, holds against the elbows or sleeper chokes against the arteries of the neck.
Okay, so before you continue, let's go to Rich for a sec. Rich has, of the three of us, I'm confident, has studied the most Helio and Gracie history. Yes, I know you've read a lot and about their path.
Yeah.
And I'm just the starting of the question is, what year does that path begin and where?
Great question. I'm trying to do this timeline in my head now. What Robin, this Mallory, this is this particular article is
1965. Black Belt Magazine, March 1965.
Yeah,
dude, go ahead and check it out. We'll let Rich prep. Rich has gathered and read all of this.
We're talking certainly before this, 40s probably.
Yes. So in research for this, I did see a sign said that the San Diego Judo Club was established in 1940. And just going through this, and I was like, oh wow, this is earlier than I thought.
So by pulling that back to, let's say, the early 40s, what we're seeing is this parallel that and this is almost always the case. There are ideas are in the ether. You know what I mean? Innovation is in the ether. Exploration, the same questions arise in all different places on the planet. In the 40s, we can be in Brazil, we can be in San Diego, we can be in France. And we're like, why should we end here? We got this guy, we ended here, it's over. Wait a second, now what? Right? It's so cool to see these parallel evolutions happening.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely amazing. Just something that can evolve in this manner, going back to what I mentioned, I think episode 1, my fascination, just the creativity and the evolution that we've seen already. I mean, I think we tend to think that a lot of this stuff is modern because it's so effective today. I think there's a going back to the misconception of this old shit ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Do not disregard it.
Right.
And one more comment on this. So floor judo, there's a guy that I train with. He likes to say, in certain, especially the position of putting someone against the fence and trying to take them down, the pummeling and essentially wrestling against the cage. There's certain things, or he calls it, BJJ on the feet.
I call it vertical jiu-jitsu.
Yes, because there's certain techniques that, he goes, all right, come with me to the ground and let me show you what I'm talking about. And then think about it. If we're standing up against the cage, we're doing the same thing, right? So that perspective to me is also very
100%.
interesting.
Yeah, even when I'm commentating, I often call it vertical jiu-jitsu. There are big differences. Gravity is exerted in one way versus the other, depending. And then the placement of the feet of the human being on the mat changes a lot, but fundamentally and conceptually, it's the same. So if fighting on the cage is vertical jiu-jitsu, then absolutely that's floor judo.
Yeah. I think there was a good point that Arturo brought up, is that you have so much things. So telephone, modern mail, World War II all happened at the same time. And I think it is because of military and also conflicts and people going to different parts of the world that American soldiers were, just speaking for America itself, they were exposed to this, like, wow, what is that? I want to know what this is. My father told me that how he was studying, it was the Vietnam era, but he started studying judo with an instructor that only spoke about 4 words of English. Faster, no, yes. And I forget what the last one was, but how they were training and learning this. And, when he comes back, he's like, I got to find a martial art. He went to Junri, who had just established himself in Washington, D.C., but continued to use the sweeps and the throws and the locks that he learned in judo. Made it very effective for being a police officer in Washington, D.C. at that time.
No kidding. Did I tell you guys my judo story? It was my first trip to Cuba. You guys are Americans. I don't know if you can go to Cuba, but Canadians can, and we do. And it's beautiful, and it's very, no offense, it just hasn't been Americanized or Westernized or Canadianized for that matter, because we haven't, there's no Pizza Hut in Cuba, right? And so I was really, really obsessed with jiu-jitsu at the time. And somebody had told me, maybe actually it was my second time there, and I had known from my first time and from other people, if you bring an old baseball glove or if you bring certain things that they can't get there, it's really valuable. So somebody that I trained with told me to take my old gis. So I took 2 of my old gis, and by old, for us, that's like a year old or 2 years old. If you wore it maybe 4 times a week. I was training 7 times a week at the time, twice a day, more than twice a day, 3 times a week, and almost every other day, the non-twice a days. So I took these down and I went to Veradero, and I see this place and it says Jiu-Jitsu and Judo, and it's got no doors, no windows. It's just a thing, old mats. And I go in and I go to give the guys a gi, and I realize their gis got handed down from their parents.
Oh, wow.
Like they've been stitched and restitched. There's only, the 900 gis on the island of Cuba that are there. Some people made their own, and the real masters had old gis. And the guy teared up and offered to train me. And I didn't speak the language. I don't speak that specific type of Spanish, or any Spanish for that matter. So they go to train me, and the idea, and I really wanted to train, and we did train, but the whole point of experiencing training where they had just met some Westerner who gave them these incredibly valuable gifts was to train with me so light and so gentle and and let me win situations and stuff. It was really wonderful, like a wonderful experience, but not great training because they didn't want to hurt me. But I went and looked too on the walls. There were all over. There were marker written where they had come back from tournaments they had won when they're allowed to go travel. And this was just a little room. And one of that, I said, Canada, and they go to point to one, and it says the date, and it was like the World Judo Championships, and it said Hamilton, Ontario. The town is called Hamilton. By the time they got back, they had forgotten what it was even called. But it was really amazing, and an incredible thing. The one guy was about my size even, so having the 2 gis was a big thing. But these are the cool things when you travel, where you get to be exposed to these kinds of things and meet these different people and have these crazy different experiences.
This is also another good point. I remember just from hearing from Mr. Reed himself that he wanted to teach martial arts to everyone. That included he went and established a school in Russia, and they had to keep it kind of quiet. And he went back years later when everything was a little bit better, and these guys were sparring, and they were still had some of the original equipment he gave them, and it's been taped up and just and you think about a school maybe has 2 pairs of equipment between the school, not but so everyone would use this and share it, but they were still training and learn, utilizing some of the techniques that when he was there, he taught them. I think from starting my martial arts in Junri, he offered classes to the congressman. He would go and he would teach, for free. He would say, hey, listen, if you guys want to go, and it was all about teaching and explaining. So the idea of going somewhere else and learning, which is really cool. Like when I do get a chance to travel and I say, hey, can I stop out there and train? It's perfect. I want to go,
so great.
Across the pond. I want to go to different places. I want to go and, see, there used to be used to be a show on I want to say Discovery Channel where these guys would go to different dojos. Something Warrior.
Yeah, Human Weapon.
Human Weapon. Okay, I think that's
Yeah.
what it is. And they would go and they would
Yeah.
do all these things,
Yeah,
and
it
you
was
get a
good.
chance and learn about different styles and everything else, which
Jimmy
to me
Smith
would be really
was
cool.
one of them. Was
Yep.
Jimmy Smith
I
one
think
of them?
he was in there, yeah.
And Chambers.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah,
you're right.
Chambers.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
Jason
so.
Chambers.
Yeah.
You guys do. If you go to, I don't know what your sporting goods, your main sporting goods stores are in San Jose and Washington D.C. But are there martial arts gear in the mainstream sporting stores where you guys live?
Kind of. So
Yeah.
you get more you're almost like a type of MMA type of glove,
Training glove.
boxing.
In a Russian store, like it's maybe first or second sport there. You can get soccer balls over here, and there is hockey equipment, but the fighting sort of corner is the biggest corner in the mainstream sporting stores in Russia.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. Just go to a mall, go to the sporting store. You got all the different kinds of gis. You got fighting equipment. You got bags. You got training. That is as mainstream a sport as you get in a sporting goods store in Russia.
So I mean, that's impressive. It's pretty big like that. That's over there.
Yeah, there's certain. You're absolutely right. There's certain countries that are known for certain. They just embrace and value combat, right? So much more. And obviously Asia has the whole martial arts theme, right? But
yeah,
you said Russia, I think Sambo. I think
so. We'll come back to black belt flashbacks, but Rich, you're on this.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yes. Fighting like food is flavored
by
region. Little typo.
I'll add it.
Yeah. Muay Thai, right? Thailand, Russia, Sambo, karate, Japan, right? So on and so forth. And then that also has created, that's also molded and shaped, the fans, what they like to see. What in Europe, they don't want to watch wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Europe is a country that has embraced striking, right?
Yep.
You're going to the Netherlands, right? You're tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
They love kickboxing, right? That's a kickboxing country. They don't wrestle in Europe. At least not Western Europe, I should say. We've recruited. I've worked
the
with
EU. Yeah, they don't wrestle a lot in the EU.
And over in England, they got some of the best boxers in the world. They've had a couple MMA world champs, but for the most part, where you see the skill they have to really, really work on is the wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Then you go to Russia, they're great at wrestling, right? It's just
the different styles and from what you get make up and mix. I would throw in, this is a little bit more centric, but we were talking to John Finch, and he said MMA is different by region. He said, if you've never been to an MMA event in the Midwest, they say, hey, we want you to come and fight this guy, and you go here. And he went and he defeated the guy, and the promoter came back and says, so our other guy didn't show up. Would you like to fight again? How much money? Okay, we'll give you this much money. And he fought and beat that guy. And then after he's in the locker room again, the guy said, funny thing, we got another fight if you'd like to come out there and fight again. So he said he actually came prepared to do that.
Yeah.
Because
wrestlers compete all day.
He had an engine. He could go forever,
Yeah. And that being said, even I know I hopped around and talked about different countries, but even within this country, here in America, like you said, Midwest wrestling, right? You just think of classic Iowa, pretty, Midwest Indiana, Iowa kid that wrestles. And then in other parts, you're kind of, you think, okay, New York kind of boxing and that history when you go to those old gyms in New York, in the city, right? It's just, that's a great thing.
And then even within a particular labeled art, by region at different times. You know, West Coast Jiu-Jitsu is very different than East Coast Jiu-Jitsu. I remember training around 2006. I just got my blue belt and I was training with a guy and he was showing the Darce and he says, this is how the guys out on the West Coast are doing it right now, because he traveled a lot, right? And it was like, really? You know, but if you're in New York and when Marcelo Garcia was first hiding the choke, and it influenced by, it's different now, I think. And I think it will be less geographic region than it is digital region almost. Like if we all hang on TikTok from 12 to 17, we may view jiu-jitsu different than the old school YouTube guys do. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you definitely hit on something like that, because it's funny when you brought the idea of New York and I think of Philly and boxing gyms, I can almost see it. You know, it's going to be a building and they've got all these posters of fights, and you can smell the sweat as soon as you come in there, and there's always an old guy there who's you know, helping the young guys out, and it crafts like a movie, and it's going to be different than going out to Chicago and a different gym like that, or in California or somewhere else. It is crafted by space and region.
So while we're on this topic, the way I think we talk about martial arts, and certainly at times we think about it, is it isn't just the thing. It's also sort of these more difficult to describe feel and intuition and sensitivity and essence kind of things, and personality. And Rich will tell you from his experience, and I've experienced it within karate combat as well as over with this LFL that I'm seeing tomorrow. The Irish guys, and people will say, this guy's like a little mini Conor McGregor. And I think that that's actually super short-sighted. Conor McGregor just happened to be the Irishman who was the big one. They're not necessarily imitating Conor McGregor as much as they're all kind of have the same view of bravado and confidence and pressure and a wobble of arrogance and all those things. I really don't feel like they're imitating Conor McGregor so much as he's just the most famous that came from that stirring pot of personality. What do you guys think?
Yeah, you know, I definitely got something to say about that. I certainly agree. And I'm going to bring in a Wimta Warrior as an example. What I'm learning a lot from my new role, and part of it ties into this topic perfectly by region. Some regions just, there's several Conor McGregors there, right? I mean, who's the one that's going to come out on top? I'll use Wimta Warrior. We currently, John Kavanaugh, he's our he's a guy that runs Europe for us. I run North America. I was just chatting with him about this and how everything is evolving in Ireland, and just some countries are built to embrace fighting more than others. We're having a tremendous amount of success in Ireland, I think in large part because of the fact that it's a bigger part of their culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our participation rate at Wimta Warrior, we take the average person, for those that don't know, we take the average person and put them into an MMA training camp. And in 20 weeks, they fight an amateur fight. Our numbers there and in New Zealand with Eugene Behrman at City Kickboxing are through the roof. And I think culturally, you know, and we're expanding to North America by roles. So I think I'll have a much larger sample size and more stories and, you know, compare. But if you look at the roots of this company in Australia, New Zealand, and in Ireland right now, where we're doing very, very well, staggering numbers, I think it's no coincidence that those countries, you know, Australia perhaps isn't known as much for martial arts and fighting, but I think we know certain fighters that can't come from these countries, and just those type of guys that are like, cool, they drink, they like to,
the loud.
Play rugby, you know.
They do shoeies at the end of the fight.
Yeah, and in Ireland, it's very right. It's like culturally, as you've pointed out, Robin, fighting like food is flavored by region, and it's huge. Like Conor coming from Ireland, is that really shocking? I mean, it's a country that races fighting in and out of the gym or the cage, right? I mean, they've been in conflict for quite some time. I would say the same for Hawaii. People always say, "Oh man, Hawaii has such great fighters, such a small place per capita." There have been several great world champions out of a very small cluster of islands, and I think regions that tend to produce certain types of guys, in addition to embracing certain fighting styles. I think it all
blends.
Yeah.
So a Savage here is like, they are imitating Conor McGregor though, and my take on, and if you go to the root of kind of what we're saying, is you could take 250 high-level Dagestani fighters, and there are 2,500 high-level Dagestani fighters, and they would all be quite, many to most would be stoic. They would express themselves a particular way. They would be ferocious in how they fight, but then noble and quiet afterwards. They would behave a particular way. And we might say they're imitating Khabib, but Khabib is just one of them, and they are all like that. They are not imitating Khabib. Khabib just became the one that became noteworthy. So we are like, see, they're like Khabib. That is, if it was any one of them, you'd say Khabib imitated them. And that's what I'm saying about Conor McGregor, is Conor McGregor and many others behave this way. And it's interesting you brought up Hawaii, which is cool. These small regions seem to build personality. And, if somebody goes to a small high school and there's like somebody who really is kind of cool and compelling, they pioneer a particular language. In the 80s or the 60s or regionally, there are particular languages that came from someone, but it isn't always the person that became famous on television. Joe Rogan says, bro, a million people do, but he's got 6 or 8 different things that he says that Brendan Schaub also says. You could say Schaub's imitating Rogan, but you don't know where Rogan got it, or if it's something that all his buddies happen to say and he happens to be the famous one. You know what I mean? Often we should question if, and somebody will, if somebody literally just saw one of my breakdowns, they'd be like, this is like this guy's breakdown. Somebody may have been doing it for 2 years. They just happened to see that one. Mine existed for 11 years, perhaps, right? You don't have to the order in which you saw this isn't the order in which it existed. So if you saw a lot of Conor McGregor, he doesn't necessarily have to be the prototype. He's just the one you saw first and saw most.
Yeah, he's the guy that made it out. You'll hear this. I hear it all the time. And hey, he wasn't even the best guy. There was this other guy, but he had a baby at this age, or he got injured. But man, he was actually better. He was more talented. But and that's not to take obviously any credit away from Conor or any of the ones
Khabib or any.
Yeah, the ones that did make it. But I'm hearing stuff now. We worked with Khabib's cousin Usman, and I keep hearing from people in the camp, oh, he's at this stage in his career, he's better than Khabib. He's more talented, right? It's the same. And I'm sure if I talked to Kavanaugh, he'd have a bunch of other examples about if I talked to him about this. There was this other guy, man. If he would have, that's what makes these guys that make it so special, though, right? They overcame whatever, maybe a little luck, maybe just whatever. They ended up ascending, and that's what we see and know. But there are several other guys.
The great guy who did blow out his knee, who would have been the best quarterback ever, him blowing out his knee is a normal part of the process of potentially becoming. It's a normal part of the equation.
Right. Well, what about one thing I wanted to say is that, and Rich and Robin, I definitely agree with you. From spending a good amount of time in Ireland, there's something about the culture there. There's something about the island. There's something about just seeing people fight Irish opponents over there. They're scrappy, man. They come to fight, whether it's fighting on Ireland or fighting somewhere else and representing Ireland. That sense of pride, that sense of worship. But on the other hand, and what Conor made his success off of is because people do love to hear a guy says, I'm going to knock him out in round 4 and that's going to be it. And the bravado and everything. We love that. But on the other side of this, you have Khabib and the other fighters from Dagestan that are quiet and humble, and they all honor to Allah, this side, and they're very quiet. And the opposite of that, in terms of selling a show, you want a guy who's going to be loud, boisterous, but the opposite of that also attracts people. I love him because he's quiet. He does all his talking in the ring. I love him because he's humble, because he's going to be the silent one. How that opposite now attracts and also sells, and also is sometimes a better contrast than the loud. And I think we're at the anniversary of the Conor Khabib fight today, if I remember right.
Really?
Yeah.
If I remember right, it was today.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. You're right.
That's really wild. We were saying that if boxing and kickboxing and wrestling beats karate, that means it's better. Later, karate will defeat that, and right now that's what we're seeing. And what we call karate is just a talking point. In fact, Amasov defeated Lima as well with karate, even though he's a quote wrestler. Being on the outside, being unkickable, untouchable until he's on top of you, is a blending of these all the way out and all the way in. But just the same way those things push and pull, arrogance, over the top, braggadocio, if that's the word I'm looking for, all of that gets defeated by humility one day too. That feel, you know what you got to do today, boys? You got to sell a fight. You got to be loud. You got to have personality. That is true only until the day it isn't. And the day it isn't comes too. We don't, this state that we are living in, where we like loud and we like our politicians to be one way and our musicians to be one way and our athletes to be one way. 7 years in the future, we'll look back at this period and think, what a ridiculous period. We admire humble, and it does happen. It has happened throughout human history many, many, many times. It will happen again.
I mean, just think about it. You were just at a promotion with the BMF that was crowned, and the NMF, who I would say is Wonder Boy, also attracts as well. He actually has a belt that says NMF, nicest.
Nicest.
He would never complete it. But and that humbleness and that, man, he's so nice. Just it'll take you further somewhere. And I think what Savage says, conflict sells. You're exactly right. Conflict does sell, and I think we, as just mentioned before, no greater conflict than the loud and the quiet, the a little bit more bragging versus the humble that we did have with that Khabib and Conor fight.
But this idea that Americans love conflict, or North Americans love personality, or you got to have hype, that isn't permanent. That is the water we're in right now. The water changes from cold to hot. And when you're in it, you don't notice it changing, but it changes, and it will change. Me saying that there will be a George St. Pierre type who is the most famous boxer on TikTok in 5 years sounds ridiculous in a Jake Paul world, but it's not. This happens over and over and over again. By all means, you got any other thoughts on it, hit me or hit us each. But otherwise, let's do one more of these or two more of these before we have to go for the week.
Yeah. All right. Let me close out that floor judo. Just a quick. I'll just read this real quick. Ken Foreman made himself at home in the small space between the mat and the 200-pound plus opponent, who would lie on top of him. He can move about in the narrow area at will, and at the same time controlling and frustrating the movements of the other man that many times appears to be moving around an opponent's thick body like a squirrel around a tree, finally compelling the rest in some entanglement around the opponent's neck that makes the poor fellow turn red and tap the mat and surrender. Floor judo.
Floor judo.
Which we may call jiu-jitsu. Let me see.
And he just described the guard, basically. He didn't say the
100%.
legs were around. But conceptually, it sounds like the same thing.
Let me see here. I'm trying to get the title of this article. Let's see if this is a pretty good one. So
Mallory, please remind us, where was this taking place?
So this was over in France. The article was 1965, but I think it was the early 60s. I will, as we discuss this, I will post the links to these articles in the chat. It should go out to all platforms the way StreamYard does it. Let's see here. That was a school to teach a strength. Here's an interesting one. This is from February 1965, and a judo technique that was outlawed. And I'll get the share of the screen up. Any idea what that may have been before I put it
up? Probably a choke.
Yeah.
The outlawed triangle choke.
No. But that's not actually the triangle choke. That's
No.
a cross collar choke of some kind, right?
Exactly. This is not your traditional. Let me see if I can get this.
Funny, I just blew it up. Funny they called it the triangle because you're forming a triangle, right?
You are
We can have literally an entire 75-minute podcast on the concept of the strength of this triangle shape in fighting. But yeah, it's a cross collar choke, Rich.
Yeah. And I'm trying to see where he.
Let me see. I'll try to make.
Oh no! It is a triangle. Sorry. Yes, look at the bottom. It started with a cross
yeah,
collar.
yeah. I see the leg. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just the drawing. So you see in the picture on the left, right there, he's putting his right leg up over his left shoulder. Yes.
Yeah.
But then in the other picture, I don't know where the leg is. So actually, I think the leg is just there to finish the cross collar choke. So here's the
longer that I look at it, I see it. It's like, as you mentioned, it's just about the illustration not being so clear.
Yes. Yeah. So it is the triangle choke as we know it. The illustration made it difficult to tell, but it is using the legs to close the foot behind the knee and cut off the blood flow from the arteries to the brain. So that was outlawed in judo.
Yes.
Yeah, you're choking yourself with your own arm.
Yeah. People often don't realize that one leg is choking this side, and my shoulder is choking me on this side. Sucks.
It's so the one thing that's very, very interesting about that is that we see that obviously, and I'll get to posting these links in there. But one of the things that I did notice in researching these is that I started at the 60s. I figured let's start at the beginning. Let's go through and find something interesting. So judo became, from what I looked at, judo became an Olympic sport in 1964. In the first couple years of Black Belt magazine, we're talking judo. Then you see karate. Then you see kung fu. So we can see how the actual magazine sort of evolved, because there were judo clubs, as mentioned, in the 30s and 40s. It was the martial art to get, and then as other martial arts started expanding, taekwondo, karate, kung fu, aikido, and I was looking for Jiu-Jitsu specifically to see when the first time it was mentioned in the magazine. I haven't come across it yet. I'm going to continue to do research.
Okay, we'll keep looking.
Have it for next time.
It'll be Japanese Jiu-Jitsu,
yes,
but there'll be some in probably the 70s and the 80s. But so interesting thought of how we of martial arts, but also how we do anything. Ideally, podcast, radio, a magazine from the 60s. It doesn't matter. Hip hop. Ideally, it should be a reflection of the ether, right? So if everybody's into judo, the people who are most into martial arts are probably writing magazines. It's not easy. It's competitive. It may have paid nothing at all. It took passion. So the people who were writing Black Belt magazine, the people who were starting their own podcasts in the early days, these were passionate people reflecting the culture at the time. So I don't think it was just some newsroom full of guys making a signing stories saying judo's hot right now, do that. They were just regular guys who were so passionate, being sort of influenced by the fighting and the martial arts around them.
Yeah, and then back then, the world, the way it was. I mean, look, nowadays we have access to everything, right? We can learn so quickly, and but back then, think about it, how you had to learn. It was really always in person, right? There were no, you were very limited, right? Really traveling and learning. It's just funny to me how when the triangle being so devastating at that time was like, should we even allow this?
So, yeah, very interesting. I was just Overeem, Glory reached out to me and employed me to do some work around Overeem versus Rico Verhoeven.
Which is off now, right? Unfortunately.
Which is off now. I literally had voiced the last piece and sent it in when I found out. But so as I was looking at it, I wanted to break down specific weapons. And it was Overeem in 2010, I believe. And he's kneeing people into unconsciousness. I mean, viciously. And I did end up making a breakdown, a little series I'm kind of making of people's singular tools. So I'm looking at his knees. So I reach out to my guy, Dennis, who works for Glory. has a Dutch podcast. I've been on it, and I asked him, "Hey, listen, as it gets to me," I also asked Duke, who will be a guest in the coming weeks, Duke Rufus. But I said, to me, as a martial arts generalist, I've heard these stories that you can only knee either with a controlled clinch for 5 seconds or a clinch for 1 strike in Glory and previously in K1.
Right.
I've heard that's because of Overeem. Is that true? And he came back to me. He goes, sort of. He goes, not specifically Overeem, but when the Dutch came along and started to win all these K1, they customized the rules. The clinch now became 5 seconds, then later 3 seconds, because the Dutch were just smashing from the clinch. Then they also shortened the rounds from 5 minutes to 3 minutes because the Dutch were coming on. So they started to change the sport, change the confines of the sport based on not having these guys win so much.
Right.
It's the same idea as saying, oh, no, wait, the triangle's too dangerous.
I have also heard along those lines, Robin, I've also heard from people close. I've worked with K1 in my experience in the past. We did events in Hawaii with them. I've also heard, the fact they wanted to make the sport more exciting.
Yeah.
Because Thai is so, the clinch is I mean, you'll see a whole round where they're just in the clinch, changing these knees, right? And racking up points. And it's not the most fan friendly if you don't have an appreciation, for that skill.
It's their wrestling.
Yeah. So it's way more exciting to create this separation and let the guys go and try and knock each other out again, as opposed to just having them stay in the clinch a la Muay Thai. So I think there's a couple factors and reasons that led to that.
Well, when that's brought up, now bear in mind, my friend Dennis is Dutch, and proudly Dutch, but the Dutch, and I've spoken to others, and he said, in his world of high-level Dutch kickboxing connoisseurs, they believe with 100% certainty, regardless of why it was said, for entertainment or whatever, that it was to stop the Dutch from dominating. And so this is also.
Well, they ended up doing it anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
true. Doing it anyway in K1. With Hoost, right? Semi, the Dutch won. Were dominant anyway.
I only have about another 15. I don't want to spend too much time on this, and this isn't quite what we started this podcast to talk about, kind of the news of the day. It's sort of certainly not the root of it. But Chris V, Justin Thornton passed away. He went into a coma after he fought in BKFC. And that's, tragic. And even just saying things about thoughts and prayers and sending stuff out, it sounds so trivial because it's said so often, but it's horrible. And we actually left this up from a week before, where I just went and commentated bare knuckle MMA. Does it give BKFC or does it give bare knuckle a bad rap? I'll quickly, you guys have any thought you want. My opinion is no. Bare knuckle boxing, bare knuckle fighting is not only no less safe, it may be safer than glove fighting, and there is plenty of research to support that. But what it does get a bad name is commissions, safety regulations, the matchmaking. This is something that, and Rich knows we're not blowing sunshine. I believe you're one of the great matchmakers ever, and there's lots of people who believe that. So Rich will have a thought on this, but matchmaking, safety, not putting a guy who's 6-16 and came off 2 knockouts in on a week's notice with no brain scan. That's what the weakness is here, not the type of fighting. You guys agree?
I agree with you, and I think that by having the modern, safety regulations, we're going to test these guys. We're going to make sure. Unfortunately, accidents do happen. It's happened in boxing for many years. I think back to Boom Boom Mancini and Duke Nukem, how that happened, and obviously it affected Boom Boom Mancini for the rest of his life. It's a tragic an event when we have a sporting event and a human being loses their life. But if we're following all the rules and trying to make things as safe as possible, it's very unfortunate.
Before we hand to Rich, my only comment on that is fighting is inherently dangerous.
Yes.
So you have to take every precaution humanly possible. Certainly fucking scan the brains of the people before. But Rich, you'll have the most information on this.
You know what? I think it's a combination of it's all those things. Some fight sports, some arts are inherently more dangerous. I will give you an example. I was having a conversation with a very experienced regulator of combat sports in America. I mean, this guy really, really knows his stuff. And he was giving me some perspective. They used to have boxing all the time back in the, early 1900s. There was, boxing at the state fairs and whatnot. And a lot of people died. Mm-hmm. And that's how regulation kind of was ushered in, was like, man, people enjoy watching boxing at these events, and we're seeing a high level, I should say a high number of fatalities, unfortunately. So regulation was kind of, very necessary, right? And again, like you said, Robin, that's matchmaking is a big factor there, right? And then we switched gears and we talked about MMA for a while. Now I've worked and promoted and made matches in eras in the era of MMA where there was no regulation. Mm-hmm. So when we're comparing two sports where boxing without regulation led to a lot of fatalities, and MMA that went unregulated and still does in many places, the number of fatalities were still very minimal. Mm-hmm.
With more fights.
Correct. More fights. Mm-hmm. So that kind of supports, how one sport might be safer than another, because again, we're comparing the two when there was no regulation at all. I remember putting on events. We didn't have to call anyone. We didn't have to do anything. I mean, we took certain precautions, right, to be as safe as we could. But there was a time where, you could just pay, rent out a building and go and put a cage up and put fights on. And I started my career in that era. And fortunately, there weren't, it was just safer for several reasons. Obviously, in MMA, grappling is a big component. You can win a fight without throwing a single punch, right, fellas? Right. So right there, by just the rules alone, it's a safer rule set as opposed to where I'm going to separate, and the name of the game is to hit you in the head as many times as I can, right? Yeah. So, I hope you guys are picking up what I'm putting down here. Mm-hmm. Passing on this conversation that I had with this regulator. And when he told me that, he told me MMA is safer. And I'll tell you why. And he brought up this state that we live in for several decades had unregulated boxing at all these events, and people
are dying.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if we get the champion and we put him up against the world's toughest bouncer, he could pass away. And depending what else has happened in his history, which is why you regulate and why you try to protect. It's inherently dangerous. Dangerous. I'm going to go wear a pair of tight pants, tight shorts, and go fight a guy who's trying to kick me in the head. He's been training for 15 years to do so. That's going to be dangerous. Mm-hmm. So you need to take these precautions. And but yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can say. Somebody's family lost a guy who competed in something that he loved, that somebody may have had the ability to protect him from this injury and death if they had done it right.
Yeah. But, one last thing I'll say. We want to learn and get better, but I don't want to think of this guy just as a case study and he was a human being. He had certainly much more value to his friends, family, and the world than just what he did in combat. So just some last thoughts on that, peace and condolences to us and whatnot. But I don't want to just, have this guy for the rest of his life, just be that the post child.
Rest of his family's life. Yeah, exactly.
Bare knuckles bad, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thought. Now let's give us one or two more of these before we got to wrap up. But this has been fun, and we'll definitely get back together next week. And I swear, if I don't have Leota Machida, I will have someone.
Let's see. I got one for you. We talked about it earlier today. Let's see. Where is that share? There we go. So this one, This is an article that comes to us from Black Belt Magazine from November 1964,
Ooh.
and it is called Sambo, the Russians' Judo. Now, quick admission, the first time I ever heard about Sambo was playing Street Fighter 2 and playing with Zangief. And it said that he studied Sambo, and I think it was in college. I was like, I've never heard of this before. And Google wasn't there yet, so I had to go and try to search out and find out what Sambo was. Now, the couple of pictures they give here, they give some great classic pictures in which it, let's see here. Notice that the Sambo players use different garments than judokas. They wear shorts and wear gym shorts. In this action, a Sambo player attempts a sweep against the other with the side of his foot. And they mention here how they were beating a good amount of judo players, as they refer to everyone as a player in this article, due to arm bars, which were, or rather different type of submissions that were not used in judo. So I don't know what type of, I didn't get too deep into this to determine, like, were we doing this on an even field? Are we using the applied rules or the rule sets of judo, or was it, maybe an more open competition? I will dump this article in there as well, but is another good look back. And again, it was something I had never heard of when I was in college. Like, what is Sambo?
Yeah, I mean, Sambo's awesome. I got to commentate it at the World Combat Games in Russia in around 2014 maybe, and it's super beautiful. You look at, if you go back to the many of the ways that we've been looking at martial arts, which is you can do everything. If you're true free fighting, is you can do everything and use everything. Then we start taking things away. Okay, you're not allowed to do in combat Sambo. You do punch and kick. Khabib had 50 of those before he ever fought MMA. As many of these MMA fighters from Dagestan had 50 or 100 combat Sambo matches, sometimes 5 and 6 in a day in tournaments. But if you remove that and you see it as a grappling art, even just what you're wearing, we can do a whole show on it. We can bring in some experts. Even just what you're wearing. So having a collar that I can choke, grasp, and throw with, but nothing on your feet where I can get a different grip on your leg. Just those two variables is so different in how I attack your lower part of the body and how I attack your upper body and control you. I can wrestle, in theory, what we call wrestling with the legs. I can attack the legs, and I can choke, grip, use the grips of judo, submissions. It's again, like we said earlier, it's the same thing. It separates off, and then it forms with its own identity, like Spanish food in Spain and Spanish food in the Western United States. Like, it just forks off, and it starts to take on its own flavors.
I found that photo that I wanted to bring
up. The uniform gets me. I remember when I first saw it, I'm like, what is going on here? We got wrestling shoes.
Yeah.
Right. A gi top and shorts, like ready for whatever, I guess, but you cannot deny that, man, that art, it makes really great fighters.
Yeah. I love that the way you put it. Simply ready for everything. Ready for anything, I guess.
That describes it.
Hey, party up top, and excuse me, business up top with the gi, and then party on the
bottom
with the shorts.
Ready for anything.
Man, let's go.
It's brilliant, but it's the variation, and then it's the individual regional innovation. There's no question that wrestling and judo and jiu-jitsu and Sambo and all of these things fork off the same tree. And much like, Homo sapiens and Homo erectus and whatever, there's parts of the stages where they branch, but they all come from the same principle. And it doesn't, and are at a low level of understanding and relation and connection to it, will be like, which one's better? But at a higher level, that's not the point, because what's better this week will not be better in a month. MVP won fight number 1, Lima won fight number 1, MVP won fight number 2. Karate versus Muay Thai, boxing versus karate. You can go on the internet and you can find videos where karate defeats Muay Thai. But you'll find a lot more where Muay Thai beat karate. Is it because the art's better? No, it's because that guy fought 130 times in his life, and this guy's been doing katas. You know, like there's so many variables. Sambo isn't better than Judo, but that year it was, and another year it will not be, and another year it will be again. But at the root, take the same Russian man with the same environment, or the same, you know, Canadian man or British man, or it doesn't matter where they're from, and give them that particular type of art, but having the tenacity and the ferocity and the focus and the drive. It's usually about the person more than it is about the art.
Yeah.
I think you're right. There's one other. I want to save this for next time. I just want to give you the title, and I want to go in and digest this. Rich, you will love this. It's called. It's from Black Belt Magazine, August 1980. Jiu-Jitsu: The Complete Art. And that's the tease I'm going to give on, because this goes through history. I can see they start off in feudal Japan. You already got me hooked.
Yeah,
you got me hooked already. So
yeah.
I'm going to go through. I'll have this digested for our next conversation, because I want to be able to speak definitely for what the author was talking about and everything. So I will bring that with me when we do have this.
Love it.
Black belt.
Love it. Thanks, guys. Thanks everybody who's been hanging out and giving us feedback and watching and sharing and stuff. We will expand on this in the coming weeks. We just wanted to start and hang and do, and we're doing, and it's fun. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you much. I can't wait to next week.
Black Belt Magazine.
Yes.
Yeah. We're nerds. Thank you. And yeah, we will see you guys next week. We will have a guest. If I don't have a guest next week, you're definitely entitled to just mock me relentlessly. Anybody got anything last they want to share?
Rich, why don't you tell us again where are you going to again, Robin, so we can look out for you?
Amsterdam. It is Levels Fight League, LFL MMA. It's actually a lot to it. The promoter Dom is very good. He was a fighter, and that's not always good. It's not always a good thing. It's a good thing conceptually. Hey, I know what they go through, but it's not a good thing always business wise or doing the. You've got to. We believe every fighter should get paid maximum, but the business still has to exist. Just that sometimes having been a fighter may cause problems. But he's great, really great. The show is great. The people are really good. But it's an accidental thing. Nobody looked at it and said, hey, what would be the hardest way we could make money? Why don't we do an MMA show? Right? But if you were already doing an MMA show and you're going to do it no matter what, you start to realize, oh, wait a second. There are these things. Some things will be extra hard and some things will actually work in your favor. And a couple of things that work in this show's favor extensively is there's a lot of MMA in Eastern Europe and there's a lot of MMA in England, Ireland, but there's not a lot in sort of the EU. So that's one. And two, in Holland, a lot of these kickboxers aren't getting to fight, and they've been doing some grappling for a few years, and they're like, okay, I'll like Jason Wilness, who's a legitimate glory champion, fought in his debut on the last one. Mertel Gronhart, who's like a real serious, he's fighting his MMA debut. So you're getting these guys who are master combat artists fighting in this environment for the first time. So there's a few really cool things about it. And I really like the people. So, but you know, it honestly, Rich knows tenfold, but you know, finishing one show, coming home, being home only for 2 days, going to the next one, COVID tests, all these kinds of things, very stressful. You know, and again, I know I said this earlier, but when the stress is a result of getting things that you really wanted, you feel guilty being stressed, but stress is real. Like you feel stress and anxiety when things are good too. You know?
One other thing I was going to mention, we've talked about it a lot. Rich, where can we find information on Wimp to Warrior?
WimpToWarrior.com. And it's the 2 is the number 2, WIMP, the number 2, warrior.com. And, you know, again, we take the average person and put them in an environment where they can learn MMA safely without, you know, no matter what age, gender, age as far as adults, I should say. We don't take kids yet. We're working on a kids program, but you know, there's a lot of people that are fascinated with MMA with martial arts, and they just haven't found the right environment to be in to learn and thrive. And that's what we provide. More details, check out the website. And also on the flip side, we also provide, a really amazing challenge and opportunity for somebody to just get better, regardless of, not everyone that joins our program at gyms all over the world are big fans of martial arts or MMA. They just want to do something difficult and challenging that will make them better. So, which is one of the many benefits that what we're passionate about provides, right? So,
perfect. One other thing I'll mention in closing. Let's see. I'm not going this weekend, but we will have the Diamond Nationals, which is in Minnesota at sportmartialarts.com. I tried to get out there, couldn't make it this weekend, but that's happening this weekend. It'll be broadcast over at our page over at Facebook. So definitely want to check out some sport karate that'll be there. One other thing, and Alchiro mentioned this, he was asking for links and information. If you post to, let's see, if you go ahead and post there, I'll try to get everything you need that we discussed in this episode. And that reminds me, Robin, we need to set up an account. So therefore, if we have questions, I will get that taken care of so that we will have it ready for next time. That way, if you want to reach out to the show, ask questions, further discuss.
And Mallory and I'll reach out to my friend Mark, who's helped me with this in the past. We're going to try to take all these in audio form and put them on all platforms. I don't know if we'll start with the first one, but we'll start with the one whenever they're put up, and hopefully go back with the others. But audio podcasts are cool, when you're working out or doing stuff. But yeah, we'll get on all that kind of stuff. We just wanted to start, and we have started. Thanks all.
Appreciate it. Robin, have a safe trip, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.